I'm Kevin Freeman, and you're in the Economic War Room. Almost 2 years ago, we began to study the issue of election fraud. This is beyond voter fraud, where people show up and vote when they shouldn't and so forth. This is an ability to steal elections. And we turned then to a good friend of mine, Russ Ramsland. He's an entrepreneur, he's a business leader, he was a candidate for Congress. Really smart guy, and he's pretty much spent the last 2 or 3 years of his life focused almost exclusively on this true threat, not only to our nation, but to your future. We've invited him back to get an update on what's happening in terms of election fraud. It's changing so fast, we can barely keep up. But fortunately, Russ Ramsland and his colleagues have studied this, and we want to know exactly what is happening to us. Russ, welcome to the Economic War Room.
Glad to be here, Kevin. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, well, give us the update. What's going on?
What we want to do today, really as quickly as we can, but to cover the topic, is to go through exactly what we have now discovered about this. Because there's this huge myth out there that your vote is safe, it's not connected to the internet, and let me tell you, today you're going to see that is absolutely, demonstrably, provably, totally false.
Well, you've proven that to me before, but now it seems like it's even more obvious for anyone who would dare look.
Correct. So if you recall, it was November 18, we saw some computer logs from the Dallas general election.
Right.
And we're not talking about bogus voter rolls, we're not talking about bogus voters, we're not even talking about polling station equipment being hacked. That's all voter fraud. Today we're talking about what happens once it gets to the central tabulation server. We're seeing that it is now downloaded someplace else with remote computing capability.
Wait, when you're saying downloaded someplace else, I go into the polling place, I mark my ballot, and I assume that it's collected on some media or device and then taken to the central counting.
That's generally true. But what you're seeing in 2018 at central counting is the guy for the election company who was running it with a laptop at central counting for days on end, connected to the internet, taking the laptop out, bringing it back the next day.
And you caught that. You proved that from the logs.
We saw that in the logs, and we have affidavits from people who watched him take a thumb drive and plug it into the central computer.
Okay.
So we'll talk to that briefly, but that is what we call election fraud as opposed to voter fraud.
Right.
So let me just run through what we found. First thing, we saw in the logs that absentee votes were entered, they were tabulated, they would print a report, then the votes were reset to 0 and reloaded from a new place.
Why do you need to do that?
Because you've changed the votes. We saw early voting, which, by the way, they played with for 4 days. Early voting was over on a Friday. The election was on the following Tuesday. Over that entire weekend, they were downloading, printing these results, changing them, and reloading them.
And you can see that from the logs.
We can see that from the logs.
Okay.
And then on election day itself, we saw a whole range of precincts actually get changed. It's a little harder on election day because you're having to do it in real time on election day because they're going to report it that night.
Right.
So we saw all that. So a loose assembly of cyber experts that we kind of know and deal with here and abroad started to map out the entire Dallas voting system that supposedly wasn't connected to the internet.
These are patriotic people that understand the cyber world.
Oh, they're very deep. They're ex-3-letter agency people. They've worked with SOCOM, the CIA, the NSA, all these people. They're very deep into this. And what you're seeing here are all the connections for DallasCountyVotes.org. And if you look at this thing, you see that this thing is connected to IP addresses all over the place. And how anyone in their right mind can say that this is air-gapped and not connected to the internet is just ludicrous. Just ludicrous.
It's a fraud being perpetrated on the American people.
And by the way,
nobody should be able, the sanctity of the vote. Nobody should be, I want my vote to be placed, I want my vote to be counted. I don't want other people looking at it.
Correct. That's all you want. So we sent these experts, and for 10 months, we took a very deep cyber look at what was going on with several companies. ES&S, Dominion, 10X, Hart, SGO Smartmatic, Demtech.
These are all the voting machine companies in the world.
Well, not all of them, but it's a good number of them.
Okay.
And what they found was absolutely incredible. In fact, if you want to see technically what they found and how easy it was to find it, it's in the 4th series that you and I did with Jekyll.
Right, I remember that.
And Jekyll...
It was all like on top of the doormat. They didn't even hide the key.
No, there was no hacking involved. It was all wide open. And what we found was that the public-facing websites were so vulnerable that we could see the admin names and the passwords for all the critical information files, and it was right there in the open.
That was one of the top episodes. That's been viewed thousands of times.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, well, great.
Yep.
That's great. People need to know this.
Yep.
We could see voter registration lists worldwide by precinct. I mean, we saw 27 million voter things in just Florida. It was incredible.
And there was personal information that was exposed on the internet.
Correct.
That we had to not touch. We had to back away. There's personal information here. We have to back away. But it was out in the open.
Yep. Absolutely out in the open, unguarded. We saw previous vote uploads. We saw all the source code. So if we'd wanted to, we could have gone in and injected our source code and redirected stuff anywhere we wanted into their source code.
That's beyond incompetence. There's no way someone just did that because they're incompetent. It had to be purposeful.
I think so. And we're going to show you a little bit about that. We also got access, all these are stored on the AWS database worldwide. So they're vulnerable on Amazon World Services database. And there's 4 locations. We'll show you the exact 4 locations. We saw all the ballots. And the ballots are really important as we'll get to eventually, not in this episode, but in episode 3.
Okay.
We saw all the counting and tallying functions. And basically what that means, Kevin, is that our guys having access to the source code, having access to the counting and tallying functions, could have gone in and made your vote for anybody they wanted to.
So after I voted, does it still have my name on it? Is my name
Oh,
connected?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
See, and I don't like that either.
No, well, I'm sure you don't. I'm not too fond of it myself.
I don't think it's anybody's business who I voted for. That's my right to share that, not someone else's right. That's a fundamental violation of my privacy. And then they could make it so that I voted for someone I didn't vote for.
Well, in fact, we've seen that. In fact, they could have you in a primary election. They could have you voting in the Democrat side if they wanted. We saw that happen in Virginia. So it's incredible. The bottom line is, if these guys can make any candidate, these cyber guys who are looking at this, if they could make any candidate win or lose, then so can the bad guys. It's just that simple. And that's what got us so alarmed and made us decide we really had to keep looking at this. So as we began to look at it, we saw more and more stuff. And there was a very troubling question involved. And that was, we began to see that the intruder tracking software, which is by default turned on, had been turned off. We saw
Wait, intruder tracking software, so the ability to monitor somebody that's breaking in.
Yes, had been turned off.
It's like they turned off the alarm system before a robbery.
Before unlocking the door.
Yeah.
And that was really concerning to us.
That's criminally negligent.
Should be.
Yeah.
No one had to provide a password. No one had to let you in. You could coordinate with any email or port that you wanted to and manipulate the vote. There was no accounting. So the question we came up with was, well, why is this so easy? To do that, what we did is we took and downloaded everything that was wide open in an Oracle database at a county level. And on the screen you'll see here, Oracle database shows missing security. And I'm sorry about the little yellow thing up in the top right corner. That actually covers the home address of the Oracle executive we went to see in Washington, D.C.
We'll blur it out, don't worry.
Yeah, this is a screenshot of the actual document. You'll see there's even an outline of my wine glass there on the right side. But this was pages and pages and pages of the database. Every single field in the database we downloaded. So we went to see this guy, and he knew what we were kind of doing and suggested we meet at his house, and he'd pour us a glass of wine and take a look at whatever it is we wanted to talk about. So he did, and this is pretty good red wine, by the way. And I slid this stack across the table to him. And he looked at it, and he started to thumb through it, and he goes, "Well, my God, you've downloaded the entire database. You've got access to absolutely everything."
Without hacking.
Without hacking. Then he turned it over to this front page again. Now I direct you to this front page. I asked him, I said, "How do you know that the intruder tracking software is on or off? How do you know if the security software is on or off?" He says, "Well, this is all turned off." And then he thought, and he goes, "This is all turned off. The default position's on. This is
Somebody purposefully did this.
purposeful." And I said, "Yeah, I think so." I said, "How did you know?" He said, "Look at that very first paragraph on the first page. If anything had been turned on, you would have seen it listed after that. If it's not listed, it's not on. So you should see a whole list of things right after that first paragraph that are the security and intruder tracking pieces that are turned on." I went, "Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure of." So normally what people expect, just as you voiced, is they expect to vote, and they expect their vote to go to someone who counts it, and they count it correctly.
And they want it anonymous.
Yeah. And what I'm telling you today, and what we're going to demonstrate, is that unseen and undetected, because all the security and the intruder tracking is turned off, people can go in, intercept this, they can direct the data to a remote location and change it, and then re-inject it back in. And so I want to take and examine that in about 3 layers of peeling the onion, because it's a little complicated and it's a lot to get your head around. So the first thing to know is that not only is everything online, but it's all, for instance, in the case of Dallas, when you go to try to log in, I want to see Dallas County votes or whatever, it will go to what's called a DNS server. Mm-hmm. The DNS server will then say, okay, well, the IP address for what you're describing is this number, and it matches them up. And then on your computer, you see you're connected to www.dallascountyvotes.org, right. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. So you're going through the internet immediately just to get to Dallas County Votes. Dallas County Votes is supposed to be protected by what's called a secure socket layer certificate.
Right.
So we went and looked at that, and guess what? What you're seeing on your screen now is a list of the first page of the list of all of the locations that are sharing the same certificate. Now, what does that mean? What that means is the key to your house is the same key to your neighbor's house, the neighbor next to him,
it's like
the guy behind the alley.
having the builder's master key. You can open any of them.
Absolutely.
And they haven't even bothered to change the locks.
And guys the level of mine could go into any of these sites and travel sideways and get into any of the others. It is wide open. And you'll see from this list, this comes from all over the country. All over the country. And they're all on the same certificate.
That's, again, criminally negligent.
Absolutely.
Because on every website that I have, we install our own certificates. You get a certificate, you have to pay for it because you can't share certificates like that.
Not supposed to.
Okay.
Yeah. So what you're seeing now is you're seeing in the little green outline the typical county system. And there will be a database there, an Oracle database generally, and there'll be some software that queries that database in
Right.
order to make reports. And while your state officials may say it's all air-gapped, it's not, because that database is the direct feed for the unofficial vote reporting on the night of elections. And that's connected to the internet. Well, if it is, you can go right back through that same path and
Right.
change the database or change the reporting system so that when they do print out the official results 10 days later, it's all changed.
Yep.
So, and by the way, the official results is what carries your personally identifiable information. So let's follow how a vote flows.
Okay, let's do that.
The first thing is the voting machine, and that's where you and I vote and all that kind of stuff. And it's one way or another that gets transported to the county. It may be thumb drives, it may be magnetic cards, it may be faxes, it may be all kinds of ways. It may be directly over the internet.
Right.
But it goes to a database there, and that's true whether it's ES&S or HARD or Dominion or any of those people. Inside the county, then there's also software. In the case of Dallas, since ES&S is the one that counts the votes here, their software is called Electionware. So Dallas has Electionware, and it's the tabulation software that splits it into the official and the unofficial, et cetera. And supposedly the official results are air-gapped, but we know they're not because the database itself isn't. That is the county system, and that's what you see outlined there in red. And from the official results, 10 days after the election, they send it to the state election office, but the unofficial results in real time are constantly being sent to Clarity Votes. And that's a whole different database system, and it's backed up on Amazon World Services.
How many places are my votes and my personally identifiable information going? Where?
Well, there's at least 4 Amazon databases we've identified and Clarity.
They don't even need to keep how I voted. They should count my vote. It should be anonymous. They should report it, and it should be, that should be it.
Sure.
They don't need to keep it anywhere. It's nobody's business. Because if somebody knows how I vote, they can use that against me in some way. What if you vote against the candidate who wins, and they want to come after you and say, hey, you opposed me, you voted against me, and they want to try and punish you for it? Or what if somebody wants to blackmail you for how you voted? Or what if somebody wants to coerce you to vote a certain way? That's the reason that our nation has been built on the idea of the secret ballot. And you're telling me there's no secret ballot.
No, there is no secret
And not
ballot.
only that, it's not only just not a secret ballot, but how I vote can be changed so that I don't even recognize it, and it still can be used against me.
Correct.
That's
Yep.
scary.
So let's just look at this Amazon World Service database so you can see this is a list. It's called Catalog of Collected Sites that are backed up on the cloud, AWS and Clarity. And this is just the first page. You can see all these sites, whether it's Hudson, New Jersey, Gregg, Texas, St. Charles, Louisiana, Warren, New Jersey, Coffee, Alabama, Dallas, Texas, Adams County, on and on and on. They're all backed up there. And all of these sites are vulnerable, every single one of them.
You couldn't mess things up more by accident. There's no way this is by accident. This has got to have been purposed and planned.
It is very, very bad. We also see that Clarity, once the results are going to Clarity, and by the way, these are interactive, so that if I go and I change the Clarity database, they can then be uploaded back into the county. So it's a circle, and you change one and it can change all the others. Okay? Now, the Clarity vote tabulation system also sends it to a company called SGO Smartmatic, and that's going to become important here in just a minute. But the point I want to make about SGO Smartmatic is they are the original software writers. And all of these companies, since we've seen their source code, we know that they are all structured on the SGO Smartmatic software. It is the basis for everybody's software. Little tunes here.
It's like the old time, the DOS operating system.
Yeah.
It's the operating system that everything is based on.
It's kind of the same notion there.
Okay.
Now, From the Clarity Vote database is where like CNN, Fox News, everybody gets their actual feed on election night. And in a minute I'm going to show you votes being changed in front of your very eyes on election night.
Yeah,
but
we've talked about that before.
we talked about that when we had, I think it was segment number 2, which was when we'd just gotten back from Kentucky.
Yeah.
And I'm going to show that to you again here.
And by the way, just to bring that to fore, in Kentucky, we're going to be talking with Kelly Shackelford here about where the new governor of Kentucky, not Matt Bevin, this is the result of that election. They have a new governor, and he was restricting the ability of people to actually worship in their cars at church, drive in church. You could drive into Sonic, but you couldn't drive into church. These elections have real consequences, and people were restricted in their First Amendment rights because of the new governor. And fortunately, Kelly Shackelford, our mutual friend, stepped in and solved that. But this is a real problem. When we elect bad people, we have bad problems.
Oh, in Kentucky, as a result of the investigation that was carried on there, we were a part of it. It became very clear that the voting system had a lot of problems and they needed to go back to real paper ballots. So they actually voted out a committee, bipartisan, I think it was like 16-0, a vote for a bill that said it has to be a human marked ballot and it has to be in such a form that the human reads it.
That's fabulous.
Yeah, there was an exception if you're handicapped, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But the point is, that's what needed to happen. Got voted out of committee 16-0, both sides, and the governor said, I am going to veto that, and it never went anywhere. But they're going to go back, and they're going to try it again. But yeah, this guy's created a problem.
That's good. All right, let's go back to SGO
Everything you
Smartmatic.
see on following how a vote flows, you'll see there's a little blue triangle by Clarity, vote tabulation, by SGO Smartmatic, by the whole county system, Oracle database, and by the AWS database. That little triangle represents the S3 bucket vulnerability that our guys could go in and exploit to change anything in those databases at any of those locations.
Yep.
Okay? But we saw something else that was very disturbing. We saw NGP VAN, which is the Democrat National Committee's database and data analytics group. And they are funded, they've got 2 huge centers out on the East Coast. They have about 190 employees. And all they do is run data analytics and forecasts and voter turnouts and how many votes need to be in early election for their guy in order to be sure to win on election day and all this stuff. And they've got millions and millions and millions of dollars in funding. And we could see them downloading the stuff from these databases, whether it was AWS or directly from a county in some cases or Clarity. But the disturbing part was we could also see uploads. What are these guys doing?
You have to. The only reason you'd upload is if you change something.
Well,
because otherwise they're identical. Why would you put the data back that was already there?
the suggestion is certainly pregnant. So one of the things that we realized is when we looked at all of the problems in the Dallas log, we saw literally, I think, 1,800 instances where it would say there was a timestamp mismatch in this data and the program. And what that means is somebody has come in with a machine that's not supposed to be in the loop, that doesn't sync up, and has put a file in that is not the current time file. So
A clean election should not have those.
no, it shouldn't. It shouldn't. So if NGP VAN's uploads were uploading things and changing the database, you would get a timestamp mismatch because it's not supposed to be in that loop.
Okay.
Okay? And of course, all of that is connected to the internet. So let's now look, and the best way to sort of explain what we were finding is this display how and where the information flows, all the softwares from SGO Smartmatic.
Right.
And in this you'll see we tried to give you an org chart so people can understand how this is set up. At the top is the parent company, SGO Smartmatic.
Right.
Below them is sort of like, in business terms, a VAR consolidator.
Everything flows in and out of Seidel.
Yeah, they're the value-added reseller and coordinator. And then below them are all the actual voting companies that we said are sort of like value-added resellers.
Right. 10X, ES&S, Dominion, Hart.
Correct.
Yep.
Now, we saw that ES&S uploads into Seidel's database, it's called Clarity.
Okay.
We saw Dominion uploads into Seidel's database, it's called Democracy Suite. We saw Hart upload to Clarity. We saw 10X upload to Precinct Central.
Right.
But they're all Seidel, and they all upload to Seidel, and they all end up at SGO Smartmatic.
Right.
So let's just quickly give you, and by the way, I just put a little purple line around the trail that's sort of the trail we were looking at in the previous slide, just to put all this in context for you. So who is SGO Smartmatic? Well, it's sort of interesting. We'll get into them more in just a minute, but they were founded in 2000 by a Venezuelan group. And
yeah, that's who I want running my elections.
Yeah, because they do so well in Venezuela, right? And in 2014, SGO had to buy them because they had had so many problems with stolen elections, with fraudulent elections, all this kind of stuff. And I'm not telling you secret info. You can go look it up on Wikipedia. They list page after page after page of elections all over the world where SGO Smartmatic was accused of all kinds of fraud, vote switching, computer access illegal, all kinds of stuff.
A lot of smoke there.
Whoa, hot fire. So anyway, SGO had to bail them out. SGO is run by a guy named Lord Mark Malloch Brown, and he has all the hallmarks of a George Soros operative. We'll talk a little more about that in just a second.
Okay.
Seidel was founded the year after SGO Smartmatic, and it was founded by a Spanish mathematician, and he's very good at encryption and programming, and his name was Dr. Andre Riera. And what he wanted to do originally was to sort of build a vault that people could put votes in where they couldn't be accessed and changed. Well, in 2006, Dr. Riera had a fatal one-car accident.
No, geez.
Yeah, it happens. And so the company was bought, and it was bought by a conglomerate of several venture capital funds that always invest alongside or in place of Incatel, which is the CIA's venture capital fund. A lot of people don't know they have a venture capital fund. Vulcan, which was Microsoft, Google, et cetera, and they have owned it from 2006 to the present time. So that's who that is.
Right.
Now, all of these databases upload onto the 4 AWS databases that we just put on the screen there. The ones in blue, those are the exact addresses, one of which you'll notice is even in the UK.
Okay.
So that's really what your election system looks like, despite what you think or what you're being told.
Now, this is what happened. You can show us where this actually happened real time in Kentucky.
And we're going to get there.
Okay.
But first, I want to prove to you that they are connected. What you're looking at right now, if you were to log on to the Kentucky State Board of Elections, you would see a page looks like this.
Right.
And you'd say, great.
It's a Clarity site.
Yeah. But here's what the real deal is. When you punch on I want the results from the election button, it redirects you to Clarity. You still look like you're on Kentucky.
Right.
But you're really on
I see that.
Clarity.
It's right there. It's
And
Clarity.
if you scroll down to the bottom of this page,
it's copyright Seidel.
right there.
Yep.
So it's all there. Now, this was a video from Kentucky that we were able to capture, and I won't spend a lot of time in the background because it's in our next segment where we report specifically about it. But I do want to show you one thing because you actually see votes being changed here in the database. I'm going to play it.
And this is coming. CNN is getting this straight off of this Clarity/Seidel database.
Right.
And they're pulling it up. And I remember you showing it's dramatic.
Yeah. And so this gold is the live feed from Clarity. And along the bottom of the page is the ticker tape that CNN generates.
Right.
Now that ticker tape changes just a half a second after the live feed from Clarity changes. So I'm going to play this, and you're just going to barely see the gold change for a second, and then a talking head takes the place of it. And then I'm going to back it up and show you what happens in that 1 second. Yes, this is late in the evening, and I want you to note a couple of things. In fact, if at home you want to write these down, Andy Beshear, the challenger, has 673,948 votes at this point, and Matt Bevin has 662,235.
So it's 11,000 votes approximately separating them, 95% in.
Right. Now, let's watch something here, and I'm going to try to catch it. I may have to rewind it.
Okay.
Keep your eyes on this screen because you're going to see these numbers get updated. They won't have it'll take another second before these get updated to match these.
But right now, this number matches that, this number matches that.
Right. This is the live feed coming in from the computers.
Okay, it's running. There, it just changed.
There it just changed. All right, let me see if I can pull
Scroll
it
back to that.
To that point. I got
Wow, I just saw it.
Yep. Now
662 there. They
661.
updated it.
They update it right there
From 662 to he lost
60 votes.
Exactly 560.
Now
Yes.
look at Beshear. 673 before.
Wait, that's also that's exactly the same difference.
It's exactly the same difference.
They took votes from here and put it there.
Well, it certainly suggests that, doesn't it?
Russ, that's just amazing. I was blown away when I saw it the first time, and it's just amazing that that took place in the Kentucky election.
Yeah.
So how do you sum this up? What do we do about it?
Well, the first thing we have to do is we have to get back to paper ballots, because most election companies are using software by SGO Smartmatic. We don't know who those owners are. Most of the election companies are directly connected to the internet, and people think that's illegal, but they are. The databases and the official and unofficial results are connected. They can be easily manipulated and changed no matter how you voted. The state and federal authorities are not up to speed on this. In fact, they're running away from it. Kevin, it reminds me of the emperor's new clothes. Nobody wants to admit the emperor has no clothes on, and nobody wants to look at this.
Okay, so we're going to take the information that you've given us on SGO Smartmatic, and we're going to put that in our battle plan, and we're going to make it available on our landing page so that people can see exactly who they are, exactly where they came from, and exactly what they're doing. As always, Russ, this is unbelievable information. We're in the midst of a global economic war. And you know, with the coronavirus and this push to change the elections to go to mail-in ballots and all the other things, it's clear that there is a group of globalists that want to take over this country, and election fraud is one of the means that they're going to use to do it.
Absolutely.
So I really appreciate you taking time with us to share this. It's unbelievable. When you hear what Russ Ramsland is sharing, this man has dedicated 2 or 3 years of his life on your behalf to help you understand, because there's nothing more sacred in a democracy than your vote. The sanctity, the privacy, all of that's being violated, and there are patriots like Russ Ramsland that are digging in and finding the truth. This is a story that we will continue to report on in the Economic War Room, and you can get a free copy of this episode's battle plan at economicwarroom.com. Remember, what we see as a marketplace, our enemies view as a battle space. This is Kevin Freeman from the Economic War Room.